Welcome to Machine Shop Tech Talk, or welcome back to Machine Shop Tech Talk. If it is your first time here, don't forget to click subscribe, click like, drop a comment down below. Let us know where you're watching from. In the world of manufacturing, it's not a matter of if something goes wrong, but when. And when things go wrong, it's a great time for us to get on that continuous improvement journey because we always want to be the best company, the best version of ourselves. But there's a caveat here. A lot of people get on this wrong, looking at the wrong metrics, trying to drive innovation and change for the wrong reasons. So today I've got accomplished author Scott Galvin on his book just released on Friday. We're going to dig into a little bit about that and a little bit about how he sees transformation happening for manufacturers around the world. Scott, I am so glad that you're here with me, man.
Yeah, thanks, Arthur. Pleasure to be here today. Thanks.
Yeah, man. So really quick, for people that aren't as familiar with you and your vision and the mission that you're on is I am in 60 seconds or less. Can you give us kind of like a high level, what drives you? Why are you on this journey? And then we'll dig into today's subject.
In 60 seconds, I'll take you back a little bit. I've always been in manufacturing, grew up kind of in the manufacturing space. Very early got into lean and trying to help people improve their processes. Very quickly realized that it's about behavior and people, not just process. And so for the last about 12, 15 years, I've been on kind of the human journey of improving organizations and improving processes. And about a few years ago, really kind of started digging in more deeply into respect for people and what that meant. And that's kind of what has led to developing a process around establishing the practice of respect for people. And really what inspires me, the question is, just creating more human-centered workplaces. I've got a couple of young kids who are going into the workplace in the future and really want to make sure that they're going into a place that sees them, values them, and appreciates them. So
I really love your passion and your commitment. Obviously, there's a whole bunch more to that. But it's something for the people, like if you're watching right now and you're listening to us, this applies to you. It doesn't matter how big or small your company is. The conversation we're going to dig into, it can impact your everyday life. Whether you're in a leadership role on paper or not, this can be important for you to tune into. So obviously I touched on that you've just had a book that you're super excited about that launched on Friday. I'll throw a link down below so people can check it out if they decide to after. But talking about leading with compassion, talking about putting people first, as all these companies are getting more on board with their continuous improvement journeys, what do you feel most companies, like the ones that you're working with and supporting, are missing out on when it comes to their journey?
For a lot of the organizations that I work with, they want to dive into process improvement. They know that they've got problems. They know they want to solve those problems. They know that they want to make things more efficient. They know that they need to fix processes that are bottlenecks and that are affecting customer service and quality. But just going after that process improvement doesn't necessarily engage the people that are doing those processes. And I think one of the big mistakes that we make is that we have these experts come in and start trying to do continuous improvement. And so the people feel like it's being done to them. And so what I've kind of learned over the last 10, 15 years is that if you can engage the people who are doing the work, they're going to come up with solutions. It might not be the same ones I come up with, but they're going to come up with solutions, but then they're going to own those solutions more. And so I think part of the process, we've got to flip the process a little bit. Part of the process is doing respect for people first and then doing continuous improvement. And we've kind of got it backwards. Most of the time we start with continuous improvement, try to fix the process, and then maybe say, well, now that we're kind of doing well, maybe we should start thinking about this respect for people. And then even then we get it wrong so often. So
for anyone listening, look, how much do you like being told what to do versus being asked to do something or asked for help on something, right? Like, I know I hate being told what to do, but if you come to me and you're like, hey, we're working on this thing, I'm naturally going to want to find ways to work with you because I want to support you in what you're up to if I feel like I'm being part of it versus it's being done to me. I was just debating, do we talk about tips or do we talk about pain first? I think let's make the pain really present for people when they're going down these continuous improvement journeys, let's say they've started on this and they're chasing better cycle times, better deliverables, lower costs, all of the known metrics. What do you see some of the pain points that they might be experiencing when they haven't put their people first?
Well, they're struggling to get people to engage. They're struggling to get people to offer ideas. They're struggling to get people to really proactively engage in that problem-solving process. And part of it is because, people are like, well, hey, that's above my pay grade. You'll hear that. Or, that's not part of my responsibility. And those are signs that if you're hearing those things, that we haven't engaged in the people side of it. And we often think of respect for people as being nice. And, you could still be nice and still not engaging those people. There's a distinction I make between respecting people and the practice of respect for people. And respecting people is often limited to just those individual actions that I do. It's very situational. It's about those personal behaviors, and it tends to be kind of surface level or short term. Whereas respect for people, this is where we're developing the practice that's organization wide. We're putting those practices into the systems, policies, processes. It's more proactive. We're being proactive about it as opposed to being reactive. It's fully adopted across the organization, and they tend to be, when you put these practices in place, they tend to be more lasting, creating more meaningful and cultural standards that people can engage in, as opposed to, if you come to me and say, hey, we've got this problem, we've got this bottleneck, and okay, well, as a frontline employee, I might be like, well, okay, we'll figure it out. Tell me what you want me to do. When I've been engaged more proactively, when I've been engaged around kind of respect for people, there's more of a collaborative effort that happens. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're really looking for. We're looking for that collaborative effort, not, throwing it over the fence and we just keep throwing it back and forth, right? It's how do we come together collaboratively and bringing together kind of a diverse group of people to have that conversation, to have that dialogue around, well, here's the problem. Well, here's how it affects me over on the purchasing side. Here's how it affects me on the material side. Here's how it affects me on the assembly side. And now we've got kind of a full conversation. We can start to really diagnose what's going on here and what is a good path moving forward that supports a solution for everybody that's involved.
That's such an important point, to have them being collaborative, to have that culture. I've been into hundreds, maybe thousands of shops at this point, so I've seen a lot of different diversity. But the ones that I've met that seem to have that culture for change, it's a very small amount, and I would love to see that be a very large amount of the machine shops. Out of the thousands I've been into, it's probably a dozen or so, maybe 20 of them that really have it dialed in culturally.
And Arthur, and also just for that point, like a lot of this that we're talking about, a lot of people think, oh, well, we're only a shop of 6 or 8 or 12 people. Yeah. It doesn't matter. You could be a shop of 3 people and you can still do this kind of work.
That's such an important point. It doesn't really matter. Some of the examples I was thinking of, some of them have been smaller shops, under 20 people, but when they hire, they have a very straightforward conversation with, hey, it's about everyone in the process. Talk to the people that get the parts from you, talk to the people you get the parts from. It's all about supporting each other, and they seem to lay it out clearly. So let's say someone's listening along right now, and they're out there, they're listening to you, Scott, and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm getting a lot of that initial feedback. Oh, it's not my job, or that's above my pay grade, or it's always been this way. That's one of my peeves. Now, like you said, these are clear signs people haven't bought into the change movement. But what would you suggest to the leaders or the employees, whoever's listening right now, regardless of their company size? What would your suggestion be to them if they want to make a difference here?
Well, so there's 3 things that I've learned, kind of 3 insights, if you will, that I've kind of learned over the years, that if I can help an organization embrace these 3 insights, it seems to move them in the right direction. The first one is to just look at behavior more objectively. So instead of judging what you're seeing, you're judging what someone might have done or not done. Look at that more behavioral and get curious about, well, why did they do it that way, or why did they not follow that instruction? There's almost always a reason. So if you can embrace kind of that first that first principle, if you will, that one takes you pretty far because now people feel like, oh, well, they're listening to me, they're engaging with me. Now we're having a dialogue. The
Yeah.
second one is to really value the entirety of a person's experience. And so we all come with not just our technical skills that we're bringing to the job, but we all come with a broader set of experiences that we've developed from just being in the world. I remember having a conversation with someone, and they said, "Oh, well, we invited Maria to be on this team," and I said, "Well, why Maria? She doesn't ever work in this area. She doesn't have any of the skills to solve this problem. Why did you?" Well, she's traveled the world, and we knew that we sell all over the world. So because she's traveled all over the world, maybe she has some experiences and understands the different cultures and why we're having some of the problems we're having with some of our customers. So really thinking about the entirety of a person's experience. And then the third insight that I've learned is to really bring together that collective wisdom. So valuing the entirety of a person's experience, but then you've got to bring together that diversity of thought, that diversity. So sometimes inviting someone in that you know maybe is going to challenge us in what we're trying to do in a way that maybe we don't normally get challenged, or bringing different people into the conversation that you might normally not bring in. If you can do those three things, if you can see behaviors more objectively, and we call that engaging with compassion. If you can really value the entirety of a person's experience, and we call that treating people like they matter. And if you can really bring together that collective wisdom, and we call that partnering for mutual benefit. If you can do those three things, those are really the three fundamental practices that we're trying to help organizations with.
Man, I hope everyone was paying attention because that's such a gift for areas. They could literally listen to you right now, Scott, and go into their workplace, into their teams at work, wherever they're at, and have meaningful conversations around this. Or even if they start by reflecting and asking themselves, okay, well, do we listen? Do I, like, on a personal level, right? Like, do I listen objectively? Do I actually hear that person out and listen to the whole experience, or do I just listen so I can classify it as, yeah, they're helping me, or no, they're not helping me, right? Valuing the experience. I really like the example with Maria. Like, how smart is that company for including them because they know that they've traveled and they have experience with different cultures. And then the collective wisdom. What did you call that one again?
Partnering for mutual benefit.
Yeah. Well, and I love looking at that within the same company. I mean, I'm big on the external factors, like with supply chain. Look, if you're not partnering with your supply chain, if you don't trust the people you work with on your supply chain, you're leaving money on the table because you're adding all kinds of extra work on your own. But to actually bring that in house and to value the internal people, that, oh wow. So let's say they've adapted all three. What kind of changes? What do you see happening to the continuous improvement efforts at these companies when they embrace these three main philosophies?
Yeah, so when the organization and the team start embracing those kind of three sets of those three mindsets, which then lead to a whole pile of behaviors, you start to see people collaborate better. They're solving problems better. There tends to be a lot less conflict in the organization. There tends to be a higher level of innovation or creativity that we see come out. Those are some of the benefits that we see, but we also see that people tend to stay longer. So there's a lot less turnover. We see that people feel more like they have a purpose in their work. Their roles tend to be more clear, and so there's a whole bunch of ancillary benefits. And so when you've got all of those things, and now when someone comes and says, "Hey," they raise their hand, "Hey, I got a problem over here." Well, there's not this like, "Well, good luck." Good luck to you. There is this, okay, well, what can we do? Like, how, there's this collectiveness that starts to happen where people are coming together to help each other solve those problems, as opposed to staying in those silos and say, well, hey, that's not my area, that's not my problem. So you get this collectiveness of problem solving that starts to happen, and creativity that starts to happen, and sharing that starts to happen where, oh, yeah, we had a similar problem over here, and here's what we did. oh, that's not going to work quite for me. Yeah, but if you modify it this way, and so you start having those kind of conversations,
Yeah.
and so continuous improvement starts to happen more organically. So then
Yeah.
when you say, okay, well, they're struggling to solve this problem, well, let's bring some of those continuous improvement tools in. Oh yeah, that's a great tool. That will help me solve this problem. Now you're not getting the resistance of continuous improvement.
Hmm.
People are embracing it because now it's actually facilitating what they're naturally trying to do anyway. And so that's why we see the reverse of, instead of starting with continuous improvement, start with respect for people. Get that respect for people established, and the continuous improvement just naturally kind of flows.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, there's been a lot of talk, especially on LinkedIn and other social channels where there's more manufacturers, about affecting change on the culture level. But how do we do that? Respect for people seems to be like the natural catalyst for that change. Would you agree that this is how people could transform their culture? Or
Yeah, I mean, so we often talk about when we're doing lean, like it's a lean transformation that we're doing, or we've got to create this lean culture, this continuous improvement culture.
Mhm.
But by and large, the way most organizations do that is they'll take those couple of senior leaders, they'll take them off site, they'll get all this training, they'll
Yeah,
remember 5% of that training.
yeah,
They then have to internalize that somehow, create their own internal structures for that, then model some behaviors, and then figure out how to cascade that into the organization. And that's almost an unreasonable thing to ask while they're running the business. And so, what we usually propose is that we bring people through kind of the process of learning about those three principles that I shared with you. And
yeah.
behind those, we've got 9 behaviors that we teach. And so, we bring everybody
Mm.
in the organization through that, because once you've brought everybody in the organization, now there's this shared experience, there's this shared accountability that can happen. And you've got everybody in the organization now trying to practice these different things. Now, some might practice some of those behaviors more than others,
Yeah.
but it almost doesn't matter, because if everyone is now engaged in trying to practice those behaviors to maybe engage more compassionately, maybe to treat people like they matter more, maybe to partner for mutual benefit more, when you're starting to do those
Mm.
things across the organization, it doesn't rely on the leaders to make that change, because the change is happening more organically within the organization and across the organization. And everybody's a part of that. So now everybody
Yeah.
is part of the design of the culture, as opposed to there's one or two or three people who are trying to push it into the organization.
For anyone watching us visually and you're not listening to us, I'm laughing because I've been in companies where I've been the one sent off site, and then they expect me to internalize everything on the 3 day training and then come back and suddenly motivate all of my subordinates into affecting change. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work that way. I really like the approach, Scott, where you bring more people on the company on board, again, to create that sense of, hey, we're all working together, that sense of community,
Mm-hmm.
the whatever the right word, people are going to think about it differently. But
Right.
it's a great place to wrap up. But before we wrap up, Scott, I wondered, we if you could just hit those, like, the takeaways that people have when the culture is shifting into this more collaborative. I know you talked about turnover. That's the one that stands out to me because it's so hard to bring new people in right now. The last thing I want to do have to do is worry about replacing someone that's leaving the shop.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there's the takeaway for the reduced turnover. What about hiring? Does hiring become easier? Like, what are some other benefits that we can kind of sum up on?
Yeah, well, hiring becomes a lot easier because now you've kind of got an idea of what you're looking for. Can those people engage in those principles, and can they engage in those behaviors? And you can start asking them, hey, if you ran into
Mhm.
this situation, you can almost do a role play. If you run into this situation, what would you
Mm,
do? And
yeah.
they may not get it, but you can have a conversation. Well, what if? And then you start talking through that what ifs, and they're like, well, no, that I would never do that. Okay, well, maybe they're not a right fit. Oh, yeah, I could see where that would be a benefit. Okay, maybe they are a right fit. And so now you
Yeah.
can start to kind of align to the kind of culture that you want to create. If you want people who are going to treat each other like they matter, if you want people who are going to partner, really embrace partnering with each other,
Yeah.
then you can start testing for that. And
Mm,
and if you're testing for that and you're finding people are like, oh yeah, I would love to work in an environment like that, or nah, I like to kind of work by myself. Well, if they want to work by themselves, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to create this collaborative environment, that might be a stressor on the culture. And so those are things that you can kind of start to test for. I mean, the big thing that I see that is the transformation that organizations go through when they start doing this work. There is just more collaboration. There is a lot less conflict. I've never been to a shop where, as I'm talking to people, there's not like, well, those guys over there in that department, like you have all these conversations where there's this conflict, and they don't even know where that conflict started from. They just know that it's this tension that's there.
Yeah.
I mean, that starts to melt away, and that creativity, it's amazing how much the creativity goes up, because now people are engaged in a positive way. And I've never met anybody who on the first day of work said, I want to go in and just do the minimum that I have to do. I've never met anybody who says that.
Yeah.
Most of the time, on that first day of work, you're all jazzed up. You're ready to go. You're ready to like jump in. You're ready to participate. You're ready to contribute. And then over time, it wears on you, right? And so you start to kind of get into this more negative kind of mindset. And so what we're trying to do is reverse that, trying to get people back to that first day of work. How do you get excited about coming to work every day so that we can move the dial forward? So
you get the buy-in, you get that culture going, and then everyone stays enthusiastic. It doesn't mean there's no hard days. Look, we're not preaching some fairy tale here. I didn't bring Scott on to talk about fairy tales. These are all real things. I've seen it in a very select few of companies, and I want to see it in more. So to everyone, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Scott, for coming on to share your insights. For anyone that's listened this far, I know you love the conversation we were having. Don't forget to click subscribe, maybe send this video to someone, maybe a boss, someone that you want to try to get on board with this way of thinking. I will include links down below to Scott's book and his profile so you can get in contact with Scott. If you're like, man, Scott, I really want to talk about this more, this is your gateway. And to all my machining friends out there, keep your spindles turning and earning.